Hi and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week we are exploring why so many people build a protective shield around themselves to protect themselves from pain, rejection or disappointment. And we'll explain the many ways in which this is harming your life and your relationships. You'll learn the gentle steps that you need to take to dismantle this wall of protection so you can enjoy more meaningful connections and relationships. Okay, David, so this concept of a protective shield or protective wall that people emotionally build around themselves, what are the telltale signs that someone is doing there?
I think you see it with my clients who are kind of really governed by their emotions. They're almost like a pinball machine, almost always in reactive mode, always projecting forward about what could happen, worst case scenarios, how they feel, how would that make them feel, trying to future-proof themselves against anything that is going to upset them or not go the way to their expectations.
So what you're talking about there is overthinking and hypervigilance.
Yes, that would definitely be one. Another one would be perfection, believing that if they were perfect, the world were perfect, then everything would go the way that they wanted. I've got a little saying, because I know we're going to go to the inner child on this one. The inner child wants what it wants when it wants it. Yeah. So there's a part of them believe quite that they're a good person, they're an honest person, they're a trustworthy person. Why shouldn't life be the way that they would want it to be? And of course, life isn't the way that they want it to be. So then they build up these walls of protection. But the problem is you build up these walls of protection like a prison, but you're locking yourself to keep yourself away from the monster outside, but you're locking yourself inside with the same monster. And so you get in this very paradoxical situation.
So you're harming yourself, but obviously in the process, you are locking yourself, you're avoiding, say, vulnerability or closeness or intimacy in personal relationships because you don't want to get hurt.
That's right.
Or you don't want to be disappointed or you don't want to be let down. You're not expressing your true self either because for fear of rejection, for fear of criticism, for fear of not being able to cope with the feeling, these horrible, scary, unwanted feelings of I've been rejected, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, I'm not lovable.
So there's a couple of things you said there, Alex, which really goes to the core of this teaching. So when you lock yourself in this, whatever you want to call it, this prison, this protective cell, what you're doing is far more spiritually disabilitating for yourself because you're not in your flow. You're not flowing as in your life because you're always restricted. And then if you listen to what Alex said, she had to say a very important word. She had to call it an emotion, fear of rejection, fear of vulnerability, fear of things not going the way that you expected. So all the time what you're doing is using an emotion to project into the future. And this is why this gets so confusing. And this is why we do these life lessons videos, because you have to really seriously, and this is very important, to consider separating an emotion from a belief. Now, I'm going to say, as I say on all the videos, I am not saying you shouldn't create emotions. I am saying emotions are wonderful. I'm saying emotions are what makes us unique human beings. The emotion of love, happiness, joy, and appropriately the emotion of fear or anxiety or stress used emotionally can make us human. But you have to create a separation because they're always the consequence or the result of what you believe. And when I work with my clients, what happens is they confuse those two, as Alex just said. The fear of rejection. What does that mean? I create a fear if I think I'm going to be rejected. Well, first of all, I would say, and I would want to talk to them, the idea that one human being can reject another is meaningless. Why would you give them authority? So you see, in that one statement, there's quite a lot of teaching to go on there.
I think, David, you're right that, this is the case in all our teachings. We have to be very careful to question the emotions we are experiencing. So if we are experiencing fear of rejection, fear of being criticized, fear of being disappointed, we're talking about a physiological emotional feeling. Now we can react to that emotion without question and then lock ourselves away, overprotect ourselves, set really tight and rigid boundaries so people can't get to us emotionally. Or we can take the other route, which is what we're suggesting, and question the emotions before we react to them. So question, what is the thought or belief behind my emotional experience that I'm having right now, which, if I don't question it, is going to lead me to lock myself away, withdraw, protect myself, put up hard boundaries and defenses. Because what you're saying is oftentimes, what are we talking about? 99% of the time, we are not actually in real danger. There is not a need to have such harsh defenses. Of course, we need to have a wariness, a discernment. And this is where, I guess, mature understanding, questioning and discretion comes into play.
But this is also, even on your description, this is why you have to take a breath, drop your shoulders, and really look at what you're saying. Really look at the communication. Again, I'm going to take on just one thing that Alex says, the fear of rejection. And then if you watch what Alex did, then I'm going to protect myself. And then ask yourself, when you do that, does that stop you from creating fear?
No.
You create even more fear.
Yeah.
It even makes it worse. And this is what I call the carousel of despair. You put yourself on the carousel of despair, being led like the image that comes to mind. Have you ever had a dog? We used to have a dog who pulled us all over the place. You're being led by your emotions. So it's not like creating the emotion, the prison, the block. Suddenly, I'm happy now.
Yeah.
You're even worse.
Yeah.
And this is the paradox. And this is why it's difficult for us to give you this teaching, because everyone will be slightly different. Alex said earlier, the fear of vulnerability. Wouldn't that be better if you said, David, I believe I'm vulnerable? Then my next question would be what we would call the golden thread process, the self-inquiry process. My next question and your next question is, why do you believe you're vulnerable? Now, that takes you down a totally different road. So I believe I'm vulnerable because people might leave me. Okay, you're right. People might leave you. Why can't people leave you? I see in this self-inquiry, as you've often said, it's like following the breadcrumbs, a reverse engineering. You're going back to those core beliefs. So the next question is, well, you're right. Somebody could leave you. Why can't they leave you? Because I wouldn't be able to cope. And then you come to the core belief, which is where you've got to address it.
And would you say, David, that if we go through these layers, so we have the emotional feeling, then we question it, and we get to the because I believe I'm vulnerable, or I believe I'm not safe. And then you question that, well, why is that? And then the next deeper core belief, what you're identifying, is that I'm not going to be able to cope. Would you say for all the people who are building these protective shields, withdrawing, kind of holding themselves back behind tight boundaries, that belief, I can't cope, or I'm not going to be able to cope, is at the root of what? All of them? Well, most of them?
I call it, I can't be prescriptive for everyone that's listening to this, and we're lucky we have thousands of subscribers, and thank you very much for subscribing and supporting our work. But I call it the 3 lies. And with my 45 years of experience of working one-on-one with clients, I would say a high percentage will go back to one of the 3 lies. I'm not good enough. When you do the golden thread, the self-inquiry, and follow down, so the emotion is like the door that opens, and now you follow the thread, follow it down. So the 3 lies at the core: I'm not good enough, I can't cope, or I'm unlovable or unworthy. In my experience, those 3 will be at the core. Now, this is important for you. As you're listening to this, you don't have to tell anybody else. Just be honest with yourself. Have you ever thought that or said that to yourself in your self-talk? One of those 3 lies. Because if you have, those are the foundations. Then you start to build on the layers that Alex gave you at the beginning. Oh, now I feel vulnerable. Now I feel threatened. Now I feel like a failure. Now I can't meet other people's expectations. Now I can't be left alone. No, and then it gets more and more confusing. And that part of the mind is so wonderful at creating, again, my word is the maze of confusion. It creates a maze of confusion. And if I think I have a skill working with my clients, is trying to find my way through that maze to help them see the core of the issue. Because we're dealing with, I can't cope. I hear this enough. This is, to me, why I call it a lie. It's absolutely nonsensical, because you've always coped. You've always coped. Now, we're only talking about coping better, but you've always coped. In fact, I call it, you are a coping machine. Look back on your life, every difficult, challenging situation, you have come through it. You are a coping machine. And then to tell yourself, after you've come through a situation, I can't do it, this is the confusion, the paradox that keeps you trapped in that prison. And you're keeping yourself trapped in the prison with the monster. Yeah. The monster's not on the outside. You're keeping yourself trapped in the illusion, in the lie. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. I'm unlovable.
And so to understand the origin of this, which I know is the work you do with your clients, because obviously you have to have an understanding before you can dismantle and unpick this.
Definitely.
And correct it. This goes back to childhood. So this is all of this now happening in our adult life is because of our inner child, that part of our mind that originates, is kind of informed by childhood experiences. So it's very much the ego or inner child leading this need for, perceived need for safety and protection because it's in danger, it's vulnerable. Is this because with your client experience, because people have suffered or perceived they have suffered rejection or instability or criticism in their childhood years?
Yes, again, we can't be precise, so we're giving a broad brush. But the ages between 6 and 9 years old is very apt to me, and I can trace this back with a lot of my clients. And this is a time when circumstances, experiences are happening to you. And the inner child, when you were a child, quite rightly, there's nothing wrong. You do need support. You do need safety. You do need somebody to put a roof over your head, to look after yourself. You could say, I need love. I need somebody to love me, to protect me, because that is how a child would perceive the world. Now, what happens, for many reasons, which we would have to discuss and talk with a client about, and what you said is very important. I've got a lot of little sayings for these. One of my sayings is, you cannot change what you don't understand and accept. So the first job is to understand it. So I'm just going to make up a scenario. If your mother found it difficult to love you in the way that you thought was normal and to meet your expectations. And you saw her loving your sibling much more than she loved you, taking care of your sibling, going to their open nights, but didn't do it to you. For a child, it would be quite understandable to say what I call the vow, VOW. And the vow is very important because the vow lies under the three lies. The vow creates the three lies. So the vow, again, will be different to everybody, but the vow will say, oh, she loves my brother, she cares for my brother, she buys my brother a new bike, she buys him clothes, she doesn't do it to me. Then the child will say, therefore, there must be something wrong with me. And that's the vow. So that is the first starting point. And then that leads on to, well, therefore, I must not be good enough. I must be unlovable, mustn't I? Or perhaps I'm not worthy. Perhaps he's more worthy than me. And then the inner child does something very intelligent. It starts to look, you got a great word for this, confirmation biased. It now starts to look for experiences, what people say, what happens to them. It discards all the good things that happened in their life, and it looks for the confirmation bias, which supports that. And then during the years, even though they're growing up and perhaps they start their own family or their own careers and they're doing things, this vow is right at the core. And this vow can be touched in the instance, in the example that I'm giving, when you perceive somebody giving more attention. And that could be at work. That could be your boss. You perceive he's giving you a big pile of files to work on, but he gives your colleague nothing. And now that vow immediately comes into action. And now you start to react.
And this, the same pattern could be if you experience as a child, say your father withdrawing from you, or say your father being moody, you blame, this self-blame, this vow, it's because of me. So then in adulthood, if you perceive someone, or you're on the hyper-vigilant on the lookout for someone withdrawing from you or being moody, you're blaming yourself, or, and it's like these observed patterns that we rightly or wrongly perceive in our childhood in terms of how, particularly our caregivers, our parents and other important adults in our life react to us. We blame ourselves if something isn't right, rather than, obviously, because we haven't got the maturity to understand, well, it's because they're going through their stuff. It's because they're emotionally unbalanced. It's got nothing to do with me. So we blame ourselves and we create this hypervigilance, which we take into adulthood, which is like, I'm not good enough. I need to protect myself. I'm not safe. I need to protect myself. And we're always on the lookout to protect ourselves and avoid people rejecting us, people kind of criticizing us, people being in a mood with us, putting ourselves in a position where we could be judged negatively. And it's exhausting.
Well, again, but for me being a Taoist monk, it goes even deeper than that. That initial vow is really what we need to get at when you say there's something wrong with me. Because then what you're doing is you're questioning or separating would be the translation from the Chinese teaching. You're separating yourself from your innate, inherent spirit, what I call Shen, from your innate self-worth, from your value. You are questioning your own value. Not what other people are questioning, you are doing it. And that is the first domino. Have you ever seen that when somebody hits a domino and all the dominoes spread out? It's the first domino. And so when I'm working with a client, the best I can, as quick as I can for them, we try and get back to the three lies, and they go, yes, I'm not good enough. I've been doing this for a long time, and nobody's ever, not once, proved to me that they're not good enough. They can't, because it's a judgmental statement. Not good enough for what? Not good enough for whom? Who's making the judgment? It can't be you, because you've already said you're not good enough. So they go round and around until they can't prove it. They can't say they can't cope, because they've always coped. They can't say they're not worthy, because then you have to now, well, who's worthy? Who gives you worth? Who takes worth away from you? And so we have to do that first, because you have to get down to that initial vow. And so in your introduction, you say, what are the steps? So the steps are this, really. They're small steps. They're taken at your speed. You don't be rushed. First of all, you have to go through the teachings. And as I always say to my clients, and they record the session so they can review them themselves, listen back to the session. And if you get a resistance, stop the tape and say, now, what don't I believe here? What is it I'm questioning? Do I believe I can be rejected? Right, let's use that one. My next question is, why do you believe you can be rejected? Well, somebody doesn't like me. Okay, so you believe that everybody should like you. Well, no, of course not. So what are you saying then? Well, I'm saying that if I like somebody, they should like me. Oh, right. So if somebody likes you, you have to like them, you see, and then you have to unpick all of the layers. And so this, and most of this you can do yourself. It is really logical, small steps. In our model, we call it reparenting. It's like you have a child, 6-7-year-old child, who comes home from school and says to you, Mummy, my best friend has just rejected me. You would say, okay, darling, let's get some milk and cookies and we'll sit down and we'll talk about what that means. My best friend says I'm not good enough. I don't think I'm good enough, Mummy. I don't think I'm as good as the people as in my class. You wouldn't say, well, go and lock yourself as in the bedroom then and protect yourself. You would say, let's dismantle that belief.
So what you're talking about really, David, is compassionately listening to the inner child's concerns, fears, grievances, teasing out through a gentle inner conversation with yourself and your inner child these faulty beliefs and questioning them in a way, in a calm, non-judgmental way, and to the point where you get to this, the kind of faults in the logic of the thinking of the inner child. And I suppose ultimately this process is about building self-trust through compassion and inner work, because really it's not until we can trust ourselves that we can begin to truly open ourselves up to other people.
And you've just opened a really important... See, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, because you've just opened another important door then when you said criticizing. And in our model, we call it CCJ, criticizing, comparing, or being judgmental. And I can tell you, my clients are the harshest self-criticism. They will self-sabotage themselves. They will... We did a video a few weeks ago, compare themselves to everybody. They will wait and find that somebody's doing better than them and then compare themselves. And they will be so judgmental. And to break that is one of the things you have to do when you're reparenting. You cannot criticize, you cannot compare, and you cannot be judgmental. You would say, and I would use this word, okay, sweetheart, why do you believe that when you like somebody, they have to like you? I would call it a loving inquiry. Why do you believe that that has to be right? Why do you believe this? Not, you're wrong to believe this. It's you're a bad person. But what you're doing, you're engaging in that spiritual development that the child part of you, the psyche part of you that we're calling the inner child, some people call the ego, will start to think things through. Some people say more logically, but I think it's breaking the prison that they've trapped themselves in. And again, I could open another door here and we could talk about it for hours. The inner child will resist this and say, well, why would they resist this? Because the prison has become familiar. They're used to it. And when you open the door, they see that as the unknown. And right away, then they will use a feeling. That's scary. I'm frightened. See, so all of this that you have to go through and break this down, but it starts with small steps, and it starts with the basic teaching of Wu Wei Wisdom. I guess you knew I was going to say this. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. And once you believe that 100%, then that's the first step on this road.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. Well, there was a lot to cover in this topic, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. But I will put a link in the show notes to our Inner Child video teaching playlist, which has many, many long form teachings on there for you to help you understand this inner child logic and help you do the reparenting work that we've talked about here today. Next week, David is producing a beautiful new guided meditation to reinforce the teachings on the subject of the I'm not safe, I'm vulnerable, and how you can free yourself of that and open yourself to more beautiful connections, both with yourself and other people. So do tune in for that meditation next Saturday, because it will be wonderful. If you have enjoyed these teachings, David also has a free Substack blog where he does lots more beautiful writings on all of these topics, including inner child work and understanding emotions and beliefs. So do subscribe to his Substack blog. I will put a link in the show notes for that. And if you'd like to work one-to-one with David works by Zoom video call with clients all over the world every week on exactly the sort of topics we've talked about today. So check out the link in the show notes to learn more about David's sessions. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new long-form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye-bye.